Welcome to the Toolman channel. This 16-foot trailer is going to get refurbished in this video. Now I've been looking for a 16-footer. I've been looking for one fairly cheap. And I really want it so I can swap out my 10-foot trailer that I refurbished a few years ago. That 10-footer is nice, but it's just a tad too small for some of the jobs I want to use it for. So I decided to stretch it by replacing it. Now, this one's going to need a fair amount of work, but I got it cheap, and I think it's got all the bones that I need to get it done right. So let's get rolling. Let's take a minute and get a closer look at this and look at some of the items that are going to need to be worked on. I'm going to start with the fenders. Both sides are about the same. They're pretty dented up and bent, but I think I can straighten those out enough that they're kind of out of the way and they don't look too bad. We can do that. Let me show you this. That thing kind of tucked in behind there is a tail light. This thing has no lights, so I'm going to cut that off and we'll put new tail lights on. Now the decking itself, it's kind of rotten in places. It's in pretty tough shape. And I don't know what's really going on in the back here, but we got a serious bubba repair. You can see how it just sort of dips down, and somebody's taken a couple of 2x6s and scabbed them together and then threw a piece of strut in between, and it's really not doing much of anything. It looks to me like whatever metal was back there is just missing. So I think the last, crawl underneath here, get a good look. This piece right here is the last crossbar that's on here, this nice angle iron. And then there's nothing in the back. So when the duct comes off, then we'll put a new end piece on here so that this is strong again, and we've got something to attach the decking to. Come around front. Okay, in front, they've already put a new coupler on there. These welds are a little bit ugly, but I think that coupler is on really well, so I don't have to mess with that. They put a new jack on. The problem with the jack here is it kind of bends out a little bit, and it looks to me all they did is just weld it along the top, and the bottom here is just floating. So one of two things. The easiest thing to do is to bend this back in and then just weld a piece of metal across there so that it doesn't flex. The other thing I could do is take this off and put a different jack right down the center here. I think the thing to do, though, is to see if I can just make that work right away. Okay. Yeah, this fender is up here, it's in better shape, but back here it's been kind of bashed in, so I got to work on that. Let me show you something else I discovered. This wheel in front here is 5 on 4.5 bolt pattern. The one in back it's either 5x5 or 5x5.5. So these are different. Now my plan was to take I've got new tires on my other trailer, so I wanted to swap wheels and tires out between them, but because of the bolt pattern being different on these, I'm probably going to have to do something with this hub here, and I think I might be able to swap hubs between trailers because they're both 3,500-pound Dexter axles. So we'll get into that a little bit later. Now, another thing that I want to do that's kind of a bonus is it looks like they had put in some sort of a mount up front here Don't really know for sure what it was, but I think this would be a really good spot for a winch. And I just happen to have a winch. Let me run in and show you that. This is my spare winch. This one actually quit working just about 2 weeks ago, right when I needed to finish up snow plowing. So I ran out and bought another one. And then when I had some time, I took this apart, just opened it up here. The brushes needed to be cleaned up, and I blew everything out of there, and this thing started working again. So I've got an extra winch. And I've got all the extra pieces and parts for it. I've got the fair lead here, got a mounting bracket, I've got the solenoid and everything else that goes with this. So I think what I'm going to do is just take an old receiver connection here. I can cut this off and either make a plate to weld to this or weld it directly to this, so that it sits in there this way, and then I can just drop this winch in when I want to use it. I know it's a little bit lightweight, but I don't think that trailer, I'm going to be hauling extra heavy stuff with it. And if this is enough just to pull something on there that I don't want to horse up there on my own, I think this could work really well, and it doesn't cost me anything because I have everything I need for it. Okay, in order to get a title for this, I have to fill out some paperwork and send in some pictures. And I don't really want to send in pictures of the terrible sag in the back of this. So just temporarily what I'm going to do is pull that strut off of there and put a heavier piece of angle iron across, jack it up a little bit, and just see if I can at least get it to look a little bit better. I'll take those pictures, send them in, get my title, and continue. All right, remember, this is just temporary. Take some pictures, then I can tear it apart. Okay, that's not the prettiest or certainly not a structural repair. It's just something, I wanted that thing fairly flat so I could get some pictures. I know they're not looking at these pictures to see if it's roadworthy. They want the pictures just to establish the value, because when I get that bonded title, they have to just figure out what the worth is on this. But again, I don't want to raise red flags while I'm doing the work here. And as soon as I have that title on its way, then I can really start tearing into this thing. All right, I just wrapped things up at the DMV. I was here last week with the bill of sale, and they sent me home with a statement of fact that I had to fill out, and they wanted some pictures. So I just came back today with all that, and I got my plates issued, and I should be seeing a title in the mail soon. So it wasn't that tough to do. And it looks like I can officially now start doing some real work on that trailer. Okay, now we got our title rolling. Let's get this deck off of here. all the decking is off and it's out on the burn pile ready to go. Looking at the trailer, the frame looks pretty good. I don't have any serious rust anywhere, just a lot of surface rust and a few spots with a little bit of scale. So I will clean all those up and see what I've got. I've got a couple of cross members I want to work on. Those round ones are the axles, but the one in between the two axles, it's bent a little bit in the middle. It kind of sags down. And this last one here does the same thing. So I think I want to straighten those up as best I can and maybe weld something in there to give them a little extra support. And then I'm missing the very last one, so I need to make something and weld it in there. Next thing we're going to do here is fix these two bent cross members. So I've got a straight edge over the top here, and I'm measuring about a 1/2 inch. And if you can't see that very well, we'll get a light here. Yeah, that's about a 1/2 inch. So I need to bring this up. Okay, these are the tools I'm going to use to do this job. I've done this before. A couple of years ago, we fixed a trailer axle for a buddy that normally they're supposed to be a little bit curved up, and his was bent way down. And so we used something very similar to this to fix that. So I know we're going to be able to do this. Okay, I'm all rigged up. I've got a, let's see, that's got to be a 6x6 timber. Hopefully it won't flex too much. I've used some heavy load binding strap on each side. So it's anchored there. Got my floor jack in the middle. I'm going to jack this up. And these are going to basically allow this middle to come up while holding each of those sides down. So let's give it a go. Okay, it's starting to twist. I was afraid of that. So let's start over here and see what I can do to keep it from twisting. Okay, I cut a couple of 2x4s to brace in between here because when I start jacking it up, I can see it's curling under this way. I'm hoping that that will keep it from curling, and we'll see what we can do next here. It's still curling under. You can see it right there. Maybe I can move those in closer. See this starting to kick out. Let's see how if we made any progress. Sort of. We kind of come up and then back down. So maybe I can move this around and try a few different spots and see if I can get it leveled out. Okay, just going to take a check. I was able to flatten that out with a couple of hammers, a couple sledgehammers. It's looking pretty good for the first probably 4 feet, 4.5. When we come over here, it looks like we're down somewhere right about there. So I think what I'll do is I'm going to move the jack over here, but I'm almost thinking I should move those straps over here too. although it's going to take a lot more force to move such a short piece. I'm going to give that a try. All right, we're re-rigged. Here we go again. Okay, it wants to twist. We'll try a little more, see if we can get away with this. Set this 2x4 in here. We're down just a hair. I'll see if I can get it to go just a little further. Okay, I better stop so I don't launch those 2x4s into the ceiling. All right, I think we're within an 1/8, and that's good enough for me. Okay, I wouldn't call that perfection, but it's certainly good enough for a utility trailer. All right, the only other one I need to deal with is I'm right between the axles is this cross member. And it's got a pretty good bend right in the middle again. So we'll try the same thing. It might be a little more challenging this time because I don't have another cross member that I can jam a 2x4 into. But I do have a nice stout axle tube. So I'm going to have to think about, and it's going to want to, the other one curled toward the inside. So this will want to do this. So maybe I can chain this to that axle strap so that it doesn't want to tip in. We're ready to go now. Got my chain here, should keep it from twisting this way. Got our straps. The jack is ready. Try to get you a good angle here. Here we go. Go a little further. Ooh. A little too far. You can see I bent the front there again. I can fix that though. Show you from the other side where we're at. Clearly we're up a little too far in the middle. I overshot it. In addition to that, you can see we got a little buckle right here. So I think the first thing I'll do is try to take out that buckle, and then we'll flatten that piece out. I'm going to use this heavy maul as a backer, and then I'll start by pounding this out. Let's see if that helps. Just a little bit right there. Okay, it looks like we got it. That's straight enough for me. Let's get started on making a rear cross member for this. Now, one of the first things I discovered on this trailer is that the width here from inside to inside is 76.5 inches. When you go out to the very end and I measure here, I'm an inch wider. It's about 77.5. So I've got to squeeze that in before I can put a cross member on there. If you're familiar with my channel, you'll know that I like to use scrap that I've hung on to whenever I'm doing a project like this, and this is no exception. This is an old center beam on a boat trailer that I bought to finish up a yard trailer I built for my daughter and son-in-law, and I just hung on to this knowing someday I would have a use for it. What we've got here is 2.5 by 2.5 inch square tube. It's fairly thick walled, and I think this will make a really good base for that rear cross member. Now what I need to do, I've taken my measurement, I know the overall width. What I'd like to do is at least make it look a little more interesting. I want it to come out to the edge here and not just leave this hanging. What I'd like to do is maybe angle it down something like this, just so that it looks a little bit nicer. So I'm going to cut this out and this out. I want to leave the bottom. I'm going to just cut all the way along here. And then I want the end closed in. So once I've cut this, I can bend this up and then weld it to cap the thing. But I have to go a little bit long. Otherwise, I'm not going to have enough material here to reach there when I get to that diagonal. I've got this cut, and this is what I was talking about. I'm going to put a bend right here and use it to close this up. I think what I want to do, though, is score this so it maybe get a nice even bend on that. Okay, I'm close now. Now I know where I need to cut this. Okay, I'm ready to weld this. I had to run a long bar clamp to bring this tight up here, and then I ground this off to get a ground, but as you can see here, this 2.5 inches is too wide for my ground. So here's a little trick I use. I'll just put a clamp on there and ground to my clamp, and I'm good to go. Here's where we are after much welding and grinding. And I do kind of like that look. I think that's going to work. And as you can see here, we've got the ends capped off. So I think that's all right. Now it's just a matter of welding it in. And that shouldn't be too bad. I got some cleanup to do here, but I'll weld it, all along these edges and on the back side, and we'll call it done. I burned it in as many places as I could reach. Kind of came back up inside here too. I think we're good. Rear cross member done. While I'm working on the cross members, there's one last thing I want to do. I've noticed that my A-frame for the tongue here only comes back into the second cross member. It doesn't extend all the way out here. So I think we're putting a lot of stress on this cross member here. And I'm thinking as you get weight on here, that tongue is going to want to tip up and it's going to want to pull this down. So what I'd like to do is just beef this up, make this a lot stronger through here. So I've got another piece of metal left over from that other trailer. I think what I'm going to do is just tuck it up underneath here and weld it in, and that'll really stiffen this cross member up. That was not fun. I had to lay on my back and weld up underneath this edge and then on that bottom edge. Bottom edge, I really had a tough time, but I put quite a few welds along here. And I feel better now that we've got a little extra structure in here. And then I shot it with a little primer just because this thing sits outside. I don't really have space to store this indoors. So I bring it in when I want to work on it and I put it back out and it has to sit out in the snow until the next time we work on it. Well, it's going to be a fairly uncommon sight here in January in central Minnesota. But we got 43 degrees and I'm going to power wash this trailer before I do any more cleanup on it. I'm going to get started on getting those fenders straightened out. But before I do that, I want to show you a couple of things I've done. I finally got that jack and put that in there. And now it's just a lot more stable. It's not leaning over and acting funny. So that was nice. The other thing I'll show you is I shortened down this pipe that is the mount for my winch. And I welded this pipe to my base plate, mounted that to the winch. It drops right in there. The only thing I have left to do with the winch now is to come up with a way of putting the wires and all the controls together in one spot. I might grab a toolbox and put it in there and just have it so that I can put it in, hook it up real easy, and then take it apart. This won't stay in here, not even if I'm just running down the road. It's going to come out of here and get stored away somewhere nice and dry. I'm going to start right here. The rest of this fender actually looks really good. So we've got a really good dent that's pushed in here. I don't know what they did there. It almost looks like they put something on there and tried to bend it up. Maybe they tried to bend it up so it wasn't on the wheel. And then this had to just be a result of this getting pushed down. Something had to give. So I'm going to start by trying to bring this out. We'll see what it does here. And we'll go from there. Don't have a lot of room for a backswing in there. So I'm going to try something different. I've got a couple clamps here and I've got 2x4s on either side to try to spread that impact just a little bit and see what I can do. Well, I think that helped. We're still really flat in the middle here, but we're starting to bring this up where I want it. Now maybe I can get this to come out just a little more. I'm going to try to bring this lip out a little bit and then take this little pucker out of it. I don't know if you can see this, but we're still really flat right in here. I got a nice curve right there. I want this to follow. So I think right in here, I just need to try to bring this up a little. Okay, I think I'm done with this repair right here. This is pretty much the limit of my metal shaping capabilities. And we are not anywhere close to Carter Auto Restyling certification here. But I'm happy with this. I'm going to move on now to the rest of the dents on these fenders. Let me take you through this one. You saw both of these were puckered really bad. So I ended up just cutting a slit in here to make a little bit of room for the other material. I'll just get my welder and just weld these up now. I think we're done. The fenders are mostly fender shaped again. Took all the really bad parts and got them straightened out, welded up a few things. So I think this is going to be fine. Let's keep moving on this thing. Now it's time to think about lighting. So I picked up these boxes, and you call them weld-on boxes, but I imagine I could bolt them on if I needed to. So this would be on the passenger side. This one is the driver's side. I just threw an old plate on here for sizing to figure out where I want to put this thing. This is really tricky getting a plate on these trailers because the plate is so large, there's no good safe place to put it where it's not going to get damaged. So here's what I'm thinking right now. Thinking about mounting this thing right in here. Now there's some room to move this plate in and out, but it kind of gets it up off the ground a little bit. I've got the fender protecting it, and I've got it tucked in as tight as possible. I think something like this could work. And I could bring my trailer light wiring right up through this cross member and into the bottom of this box, so that wouldn't be exposed. I'm using rib nuts to attach those housings to the frame, and that extra hole is to bring the wire up into the housing. Now, this is how I'm doing my tail lights. I know they are quite a bit forward from the back of the trailer, but they're still visible, and they are out of harm's way. And we'll see how that license plate fares, but I think it's at least in a safe place. Now I'm going to take them all off so I can clean this thing up and paint it. Got a nice, really warm day today, so I'm going to start grinding on this with a wire wheel. And hopefully it goes fast. This might take more than a day though. We're almost ready for paint. I spent a lot of time with the wire wheel. It went through actually 2 wire wheels, getting all of the surface rust off of this. And that's as much as I really need to do, because I'm going to use a rust converter, a rust treatment, before I put my paint down. The other thing I did is took a minute and cleaned up some welds. There were a few cracks, so I welded some things up. And then I also welded on, let me see if I can show you this. I welded some rings on here. Let's see if I can get underneath and show you. There's a couple more along there. But I welded some rings along here and then across that cross member in the back on a few spots, so that I can run my wiring and have it all nice and neat. So I thought this is the best time to do it before it gets paint. So that's what we're going to do. Okay, I'm going to be using Ospo here for my rust treatment. And I haven't used this brand. I've used another one called Crud Cutter, and I just can't find that anymore. But I think this pretty much has all the same base ingredients, and this will do the job. So what I'm going to do is paint this on everywhere and then let it sit for 24 hours before I move on to paint. The other thing I'll show you is I've tarped off the floor underneath here, because my experience with crust cutter is it's really corrosive on concrete. So this will protect my floor. Okay, I got a coat of Ospo on everything, and I mean right down to the paint. They say it's actually a good paint prep too, so I just covered everything. And I used about half a quart to do this trailer, so I've done everything, even up underneath. And this is about, some of it I just put on, but most of the stuff on the frame here has been on now for a couple hours, and you can see it's a little tough with the lighting here, but it is definitely turning black. That's what it's supposed to do. I'm going to give this at least till tomorrow morning, and then I can start painting. Okay, it's the next morning, and I think we're ready to paint. When I came in here, there were still some kind of wet, sticky spots left from last night or yesterday afternoon. And so I took a bucket of water and a rag and I went over everything and wiped it all down and let it dry. And I think we're ready to paint now. For the most part, I wouldn't say it turned completely black. It's just more of a dark brown. And we've got a few spots of white here. It's funny, it was the spots where I welded, so it must have reacted to that. But we're going to get going. I want to paint everything. All the undersides, all the insides of this stuff, so that it's all 100% protected. This is the paint I'm going to use. It's Rust-Oleum Farm and Implement Paint Low Gloss Black. Used this on my trailers. I used it on a lot of work I did on my Willis truck. And so we're going with black just because it looks good on a trailer. And if I need to touch it up, I can always find this. I think we're mostly done with the painting here. Everything's got one coat, and I used just a little over a quart. I had a little left over from another one, maybe a quarter of a quart, and then 1 quart, and I was able to do all of this. I thought it would go further, but I guess I underestimated getting into all these little nooks and crannies. And I've still got some brush marks where there's a little green showing through. And what I'll do with that is come back and hit it with a spray can. I've got a couple of cans of the same low gloss Rust-Oleum. So we'll hit those. But it looks better. I know wiring isn't the most exciting thing, so I went ahead and wired up those tail lights. Just got them both on now. There's my routing up through the frame and to the front. And when I get the deck on, I'll probably tack that up to the bottom of the deck to take care of that little bit of sag in the wires. And the other thing I did here, I've got my connector now, and then I also got a brand new set of chains, safety chains for the trailer. So that's looking good. I think next we're going to get on to the suspension work here and get that done. Since we got the wheels off, I want to show you something here. First of all, this is called an equalizer. Watch this equalizer, and I want you to look right up, kind of the relationship between the top of it and this solid point. When I jack this thing up, you see how that moves? Let me take it down and do it one more time. There. We'll do this one more time. Right in here, watch this thing. Without this moving at all, okay, that whole thing should have lifted up the trailer right there, but that means there's a lot of slop in there. We'll take it back down. So that's problem one. Now let's shift over and look at problem two. I'm going to just lift up this rear axle. I want to watch right here. There we go. Hang on. There. Right there. Now watch that shackle goes up, and this thing isn't going up at the same rate. So we got, again, a lot of slop in here. I checked the other side. It's the same way. and I'm sure this one is too. So I'm going to replace pretty much all of this. I was going to just do bushings, but I suspect these bolts are probably in tough shape. Um, and it's actually cheaper for me to buy a kit that's got shackles, bolts, and these equalizers in it is to buy the independent parts. So let's just replace all of that. I'm going to start the job by getting these things disassembled. So I want to get these nuts off. I'm going to do one axle at a time here as far as getting this stuff apart. I've already put some WD-40 on here, and we'll see if I can get that going with an impact wrench. All right. I think we got that shackle out. All right, I'm skipping past some of this, hitting this thing with the impact wrench. I got them all out, but let's just take a look at this and see if you can see how far these are worn. These are the bolts. I think this was the front of the spring. There's such a shoulder on this right now. I don't know if you can see this. That's shot. Both the bolts that go through the shackle, same story. And let's take a look at the equalizer. You can see these nylon bushings are just gone. We'll take those out so we can get a better look inside here now. Am I going to get that out? Yeah. Okay. But this is why I was wondering why they sell so many of these equalizers, and it's because of this. Even though this is big, heavy cast iron, it's every one of these is oblonged out. It's not good enough just to put a bushing in there. This is shot. So here's my brand new replacement piece. Bushings are already installed in that. I've got new bushings for the shackles and all new bolts for everything. We got our suspension work done. And really the hardest part of this job was getting those old bolts out. This one way up in front here in particular, it was the last one I had to do, and this one was just a bear to get out, but I did finally get it out. Let's get the tires back on. I want ramps for this trailer, and I'm going to go with a 5-foot ramp, very much like what you see right here. Now these are off of my other trailer, and I could just grab these and sell the other trailer without ramps, but these fit so nice on that trailer, I just can't bring myself to separate them. So I'm just going to build another set. It's not that expensive to buy the metal. So I've got about 175 bucks here in steel. I've got some 2-inch and some 2.5-inch. And I'm going to use this to make my ramps and to make the little stowage rails that go underneath the trailer so that these can slide in and just stay under the deck when I'm not using them. This right here is everything I need for one ramp. So I've got my side rails, I've got my cross pieces, and I've got my clips that'll hook it onto the trailer. I took a minute to get this thing squared up. I've got it clamped to my table so it doesn't move. And I took the 2 marginally longest cross pieces here, put them on each end so I know these will drop into the middle. So I'll take a quick measure here. I'm at 61 and just a hair under 3/4. And I'll check this side. There we are. And it's the same. So I know that we're squared up real good. I'm going to tack these in, and then I'll start laying these out. And I made up some blocks for laying these out so they end up in the right place. So all I got to do is use these spacers, then I can tack these in and work my way down. We're all tacked together now, so everything should stay in place. All I need to do now is go through and just burn it all in. And it's going to take a little while, but I'll be back when I finish that. We're all welded up. I hit every one of these and laid it in nice and hot. Used flux core and cranked her up to the highest setting so that I could get good penetration on this 3/16 metal. And I think this is good enough. Let's move on. You might have noticed that I've already cut down into this end that goes on the ground and on this end so that it'll line up nice. Let me show you how I did that. I used a jack stand to get this thing to the height that it will be when it's on that trailer. And then I just wanted to get this cut so it would be parallel to that. And as well as so that would lay flat on the ground. So it was pretty simple. All I had to do is figure out where I wanted to start this. Get a square on the ground, draw a line. Now I knew where to cut. Down at this side it was fairly easy too. So all I did was again figure out where this was going to go. And these blocks that I use happen to be just about right. I stuck that block under there, or set it up right against the side of this, traced it. So now that sits nice and flat on the ground. It gets me a little bit closer so there's less to climb over to get on the ramp. The final build task on these ramps, short of cleaning and painting, is to get the hooks on here. I just cut a couple of pieces of this 2-inch I'll put a hook on either side, and let me show you how that's going to work. Assume this is the deck of the trailer. I'm going to have a bar of steel sticking out, I don't know exactly how far, but sticking out far enough across the whole back of the trailer. So then with the ramp, I can hook in just set on top of that. Now I just have to get my spacing right. I need this sticking out far enough that it can hook on and leave some room. And I want to have it so that it's not super tight. So what I'm going to do is throw a paint stick in here to kind of help get this spaced out right. So there's a little bit of margin. So I'll have it right about there, that it's got enough room to hook over without being too snug. Give you a rough idea of how this will all work now. Assume this is the back of the trailer. And we'll just hang this over, straighten it out, and it's good. That's how it's going to land. Now I just got to duplicate this and I'll be done. Next thing I want to do is come up with a stowaway system, underdeck stowaway system for these ramps when they're not in use. So I've got a bunch of angle cut. I'm going to slide them in this way, right here, underneath these two bays so that they tuck up and they don't hang below the deck. I could have slid them in from the back, but I don't want them sticking down that far. So we'll slide them in from the side. You can see I've already got one here clamped in that I'm going to weld. I'm going to basically go 1, 2, 3, 4 in this bay for the ramp, be able to slide it in. And I'll reveal the design choices I'm making here as I go, but I want to start by just welding in my first support piece. Getting ready to weld in this second piece on this side. And if you notice, there's a hole drilled through this and through the rail. And I've been thinking about, once I slide this in, how do I keep it from sliding back out? And I thought I'll just use a simple pin. But I've also heard people talk about, you know, their ramps being stolen. And so what I thought I would do is just use a hitch pin, a locking hitch pin. So I'll drill a hole in the ramp itself that slides through here and be able to run this all the way through. I'll show you this way. Be able to bring it through. We'll put our lock on there. And that'll keep it in place, and it'll also prevent it from being stolen. This is roughly how this is going to sit back here. And now I need to space out this second support rail because I got about a 3-inch gap here I need to extend. So I'm going to make some standoffs, and then I can put that other rail on that. So I was looking at what material I have available. Now, this is a 2.5 by 2.5 tube that goes across the back. And just so happens, I've got a 13-inch section of this left, so I can cut 4 3-inch sections out of this and use those as standoffs. Got my first standoff in place. I'm just going to weld this in. I think I'll just weld all of these in, and I'll come back and then we'll show you how the rest of the rails are going to hook in. I got my back rail clamped in, got it all measured up, and I can weld this in now, and then we'll move on. All right, we got this one welded in, and that is plenty strong. All it has to do is just hold up that gate. That's not going to move. Well, we're all welded up. Let's load this first ramp in and see how we did. Oh, it's tight. Aha. I thought I left enough room. I didn't want it to be this snug. It's not good. Yeah. Well, what did we do? I think I might be able to bend this out a little bit. Well, I don't know why it did this, but my ramps, I've measured them, and they are probably a 1/16 under 14.5 all the way through. And when I start checking along here, you know, I'm closer to 14.75 until I get right up close. Even right here, I'm creeping in on 5/8. When I get right to this one, I'm sitting at 14.5. So it must be just not quite enough room. I think what I want to do is cut this weld and see if I can just move this over a hair. I don't think I can bend this or get this thing to move because it's all welded in up there. Hang on, let's start this way. Yeah, it's 14.5 way up high on top. So I think if I cut this weld, clamp this down and re-weld it, I think that's going to be enough to get me that clearance I need. All right, with the help of a Sawzall, I was able to get just a little more clearance and move this over just a hair. And I tacked it first, fitted it in. I should have done it that way to begin with. And then when I was sure it looked good, I burned it in. So let's load her in there one more time and see how we do. There we go. I think that's going to work. Now the next thing I need to do, we'll come around and show you here. There we go. We need to drill for that retaining pin. So I'll mark it from the backside, drill it out, and then we'll be good. Okay, we got it drilled in there. And pin fits. I put a lot of extra clearance just to make it easier to line up. But I think that's going to work. And I think this is long enough. I was kind of looking at it saying, what would happen if I ever lost my key? Would I be able to get a grinder and get this thing apart? Well, I think that's pushed all the way into the hilt. And I've got a good, say 1.25 inches there. So I think by the time I add another, 3/8 on the other side, I'll still have enough room that if I had to push this forward and crawl underneath there and hit it with a grinder, I could. I mean, somebody could do that to steal it too, but they're working awful hard if they're doing that. I'm glad I did this before the deck went on, because I got easy access to everything I need to get to. So the other plus about my locking system here is I really don't need to put stops down at this end, because with those in place, this can't move either direction. So now I just need to move on, get this side in, and I'll be finished. This side might be a little more challenging only from a welding point of view, because I got to get up underneath there to weld that one in, whereas on this one, I could weld it, from above here. So we're all done. Everything's welded in, adjusted to fit, painted. The only thing that hasn't been painted yet is the ramps. I'll get to those in a while. Show you how this locks in now. Come straight through here. That's it. Ramps aren't going anywhere. All done. So the last thing I need to do now is get my support back on here to hold the ramps when they're in use. So I've just tacked this stuff together, but I just took some, this is probably 1/4-inch steel, and made up these brackets, and then I cut small pieces just to stick them out a little bit from the back here. So these are going to go right on here about there. So I just need to get those welded in place, and then I'll show you how they work. So we're all welded up, nice and tight. Let's just fit these ramps in. I'll show you how they'll hook on here. There we go. All right. It should work really good. So I've got 3 standoffs here supporting this, and I positioned them in a way that I can have these ramps about as wide as the trailer right there. We can come in, now we hop over this one here, and we've got from here all the way to there. And even if we want 2 of them really close together, we can do them here. Or if I just want 1 ramp, there's enough room here to run a single ramp centered. I don't know why I'd do that, but there's lots of options. There's not many positions that we can't have these ramps in. By the way, I forgot to mention, now, if you've watched any of my videos, you probably see that I really like to reclaim old steel and hang on to stuff in my hoard. And this is no different. This is what I use. It's probably 2-inch by 1/4 flat stock. And this was the base of an old workbench that I took apart. And I saved this. This is really nice material, and that's what I used to make these ramp supports. I just got back from picking up the decking. With all this other work done, I'm in a good spot now to put decking down. I really didn't want to take this thing out in the snow, but it was inevitable, so I'm going to have to wash it down before I lay down decking. And I had to buy 18-foot. These are 2x12s. I had to buy 7 of these things. They're 18-footers. Because the length of this trailer is 16 foot, the deck length is 16 foot 3 inches. Who does that? So yeah, I've got a little bit of waste, but I got a good deal. I picked these up at a lumber yard that I've used before. They're about 1.5 hours from home, but it was worth the drive because I got these for about half, a little less than half, I guess, or a little more than half of what it would have cost me to go to, say, a Menards or something. So, about $200 with tax for the decking on this. I think that's a pretty fair deal. So I think we're just going to work on it right here. Now my approach here is pretty simple. I'm going to start on the outsides, and so I'll do this first one on this side, then I'll come over here and do this side, alternate back and forth with the last one going right in the middle. That's the one I'll have to cut. These are 2x12s. So there's only 7 of these to do. So what I've already done is got one kind of pounded in. I used that's what, about a 10 or 12 pound maul, and just seated it real good. I'm gonna mark it here. I'll pull it back out, cut it, and just take them one by one as I go. All right, I see just a little gap running along here. Some of it might be the trailer, but I'm going to guess most of it is just a little bit of a bow in this. So before I screw this down, I'm going to clamp this to pull it over tight. All right, we're all done with the decking. And that, let's see, this narrow piece here, just a little over 8 inches down the middle, that was a tough one to get in there. I wanted it to fit nice and tight. And it was interesting, it was like 8 inches and 1/8 up to about somewhere in here. And then it started to widen, and it widened up to 8.5 up there. So that's kind of strange. But so I snapped the line and ripped it down, and you know, it was a really tight fit. With the help of a sledgehammer and some clamps and a floor jack, I was able to get it where it belongs. So now I'm going to leave this for probably a year. I'm not going to touch the deck surface, and you know, let it kind of cure. Then I'm going to come in and probably treat it with motor oil like I did with my other trailers, and then just every so often put a little coat of used motor oil on there, and that'll kind of help preserve it too. Well, as it turns out, the title wasn't completely simple. I expected to get a title in the mail. I got this instead. They want me to bring this in for an inspection, and so I'm just wondering what all they're looking for. The second page of this, though, says it's not a safety inspection, but I think I'm going to do some extra work. I decided to do a bunch of stuff just to make sure that we were 100% good. So what I've done is, well, first of all, I moved that drum from my other trailer onto this one so I could move those new wheels here. So now I've got 4.5 on 5 on everything. The other thing you'll notice is those drums look really clean and new. I removed both the drums, took them in, had them turned. They're in really good shape. I put new brakes in, so I've got new backing plates and brakes. and I have rewired this thing completely to accommodate those brakes. So I've got my 7-pin plug on there now, and I even went as far as put a breakaway system so that this hooks to the truck. If the trailer breaks away, this little box in here that's got a battery in it will lock up the brakes so the trailer stops. So let's see what else. Oh, and then I cleaned up the wheels from my old trailer and painted them. Those will be going on this trailer now. Oh, there's one more thing I forgot to mention. I put the D-rings. The D-rings on this trailer were basically had carriage bolts, and they were bolted to the floor. I don't really want them on the floor because when it comes time to shovel snow off of this thing, I don't want to be hitting those. So I moved them up to the sides here, welded them on. I had 6 that came with the trailer, so I moved them onto the sides. And I'm going to buy 2 more or 4 more so I can put one way up in this corner and way back in that corner. All right, the trailer is done, and now we're going to load my truck on here just to see how everything works out. So let me grab those ramps and let's get it started. Watch the ramps as the front wheels run over them. You don't see any flex. That's perfect. Should have warmed the truck up before I ran it up there, but we got up there. Had a little trouble just getting over this lip, but it's all right. So the trailer looks happy. My truck's not squatting. I think this is good. This is going to work. Now the next thing I want to do is give that winch a try. I was able to drive this on, but let's try winching it on just to see how that works out. I want this winch to be portable. I don't want to leave it on the trailer, so I'm only going to be pulling it out when it's in use, and then I want to put it back away. So what I've done is taken an old toolbox and put all of the controls inside this box. And so I've got my winch controller that plugs in, let's see, right here. I've got another controller that's just fixed, that's right on this box. This yellow and blue go out through these little holes in the side, and I can hook those right to the winch. And the red and the black over here I can bring along a battery and hook those to a battery, and we're good to go. So this just goes in the shop on a shelf until I need to use the winch, and then I'll bring it out when I need it. Well, that worked great. It's a 3,500-pound winch, so I don't think I'm going to be dragging anything on here with locked up wheels, but boy, if it can roll, I think it can go right on here, no trouble. I think I'm done with everything on this now. The last thing I needed to do is take it out on a road test, and the brakes are working great. I just adjusted them, and there's really nothing left to do on this. I have been picking away at it over the winter, and so it's good to have it finally finished. All I have left to do now is go get my old trailer, clean that up, and get it sold. So thanks for joining me. I know this has been a long video, but I thought I'd at least try to capture a little bit of the work I was doing on it. We'll see you next time.